Welcome to the How to Become a Doula webinar. This webinar is a one-stop shop on learning how to become a doula in 2021, what those doula course and certification requirements are, how to choose a program that's centered and focused around Black maternal health, and what you can do to navigate this journey in 2021. So thank you all for joining me tonight. If as you come in, I'm going to make sure that you're muted so that you won't interfere with the rest of everyone else who's on the webinar. So thank you all for joining me. So our learning objectives for tonight, we're going to go through what it means to be an advocate for an expectant mother, what it means to provide support during pregnancy, labor, birth, loss, abortion, and postpartum periods. We're going to talk about ethics, standards, and requirements for certification for doula programs. I'm going to give you a list of programs, obviously, that I recommend that are centered on Black infant and maternal health. But obviously, at the end, I will talk about my upcoming training that I have going on this weekend for 8 weeks and a discount that you all will receive. So stay towards the end of the webinar so we can talk about that. So let's hop right on into it. So my name is Erica McAfee. I'm the founder and podcast host of Sisters in Loss. I help women conquer grief from miscarriage, infant loss, and infertility to strengthen their faith, gain clarity and peace, and thrive in their new normal. I'm also a certified full spectrum doula, specializing in bereavement, but I do support clients through birth and postpartum. I'm a grief specialist, I'm a maternal near miss survivor, and I've lost 2 babies who are in heaven watching down on me, and it's the reason why I do this work. And then I get to raise my superstar, my rainbow baby, who I affectionately call Super Mighty Max. His name is Maxwell, and do everything else that I do on a day-to-day basis. But this is just a little bit about me and just why I'm qualified to teach this webinar tonight. I'm also a doula educator. I've been training doulas. I trained over 100 doulas last year during the pandemic, all virtually. And we're going to do the same again this year in 2021. So I'm excited that you all are a part of this. You want to learn more about how to become a doula, as doulas are needed. Doulas have been needed, but doulas are definitely more so needed now as COVID-19 isn't going anywhere. We are in, more than likely, as people start to get vaccinated, it's still going to be going on as vaccines become more available to other communities, as we go from phase 1A, which is what we're in currently, to phase 1B, to phase 1C, and then it opens up to the general public. We're talking about probably the fall, when just your general, everyone who is available can get a vaccine. It's available to us. So what does that mean for birthing people? It means that there is a lot of opportunity that is still there, especially while numbers are high, especially why we have a lot of people dying on a day-to-day basis, as we have had over the last 2 months, from Thanksgiving to now in the new year. Doulas are needed to help support people through loss, through birth, and even especially in the postpartum period. So we'll talk all about that today, but I wanted to just introduce myself and say, hey girl, how y'all doing? So let's start with the rates. I'm an engineer, so we're gonna start with the numbers. And right here is why doulas are needed. 5.89 is the infant death rate in the United States per 1,000 live births, according to the CDC. This number is a little old, don't get me wrong. But one thing that I do know about this infant death rate is that even though this 5.89 is where it's at, and it's where it's been since 2016, even if they brought out the 2021 numbers and normalized them, took out COVID for 2020, right? We still would see these same rates. If not, it would be higher on the spectrum. And then this beautiful little boy is my rainbow baby. This is the first few moments after his birth. So I always try to share pictures of my babies here to honor them. So let's break it down by state. What is the infant mortality rate by state, which gives us that US rate, which is the 5.89? And pick your state. I'm sure you see your state here, wherever you're living at currently, wherever you're from, whatever place that you like to visit, but just focus on the South. The South is where all these rates are highest. As you can see, you have a 9.0 um, a 9.08 rate in the US right now. Back in 2016, when this chart was developed, in Mississippi, and then you have it, 8.52 in Alabama, 7.44 in Georgia. And this is just the overall state rates, right? There may be more, the rates may be higher in certain cities in some of these states in the South, particularly, and then definitely cities that are more rural and may not have the same resources, whether it's access to a OBGYN or access to a freestanding birth center or a nurse midwife who's in the area to birth babies. And it's the reason why these mortality rates are higher. And then obviously the underlying condition with a lot of the southern states on why these rates are so high is racism. Racism is typically high in the South. It has been. It's shown its face. We are looking at it today as the second impeachment happened today. So you all know a lot of it's systemic, it's intertwined and intergrained into the structure of our medical system. And unfortunately, it shows its ugly head in the South. And that's the reason why the rates are so high in the South compared to the rest of the country, which the average rate is about a 5.89. As I mentioned before, obviously these rates are old. This report was published in 2016 based on 2013 to 2015 numbers. But I can tell you that these numbers are higher than they were, just 7, 8, 6, 7 years ago. So what does that mean as a doula? How do we help control and decrease these rates in our own state, in our own communities, at our own local hospitals, what we have access to on a day-to-day basis? So let's break it down by racial disparity. I already told you racism is a factor in a lot of the rates that are there, the systemic racism that's in the healthcare system, the structural system, but also let's break it down how the disparity plays a role across when it comes to Black, Indigenous, Hispanic compared to our non-Hispanic white counterparts. So as far as live births, when it comes to infant mortality, you can see here for a non-Hispanic Black, it's about 11.4 compared to our non-Hispanic white counterparts, which is about 4.9. And this rate is per 1,000 live births. And as I mentioned before, these are all taken from that 2016 survey that the CDC published based on data from 2013 to 2015. So we know that there's a crisis in the country. We know that, non-Hispanic Blacks, we can see here that Alaska Native American Indians and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, as well as Hispanics, definitely have have a disparity compared to the non-Hispanic white counterparts. And when we break it down even further, when we come back to our own states and break down the rates per state, so say you live in Virginia, say you live in Maryland, say you live in Georgia, you will see those disparities have an even further gap based on per capita, per city, per person, wherever it is. So that's something that I always encourage my doula students to do, to actually go and research and do the digging on their information for their personal states, because having the national numbers are one thing, but it really could be worse in the area that you live in. And just you becoming a doula, supporting clients who look like you or clients who have the same values as you can help reduce those rates, per capita just in the area that you live in. So we know that this racial disparity exists. We know why it exists. So how do we fix it? How do we become doulas so that we can help fix these rates? So this is a comprehensive a model for just what continuous labor support. So there's been plenty of studies that you can go do your Googles, just Google doula continuous labor support studies that have been documented and have shown that having some type of emotional, physical, and informational support person throughout the pregnancy and in during the labor and delivery portion, as well as in the postpartum period, can help increase self-esteem, increase advocacy, increase mobility, increase the oxytocin that the birthing person generates. It can help decrease their pain because they know what to focus on. And then they can have a positive ongoing birth experience, out of body birthing experience where it's spiritual, where it's a connection with the mind and body, and really to their faith and to God, as God is ushering in this new life that they have, that they all have decreased anxiety and worries, and they don't have any fears because they have been groomed almost. They have been supported. They've gotten their questions answered. They haven't been gaslighted in the OBGYN office. They feel like they actually have people around them that are listening to them as they know how to be in touch with their bodies and know exactly what they're feeling in their bodies, so that when they do get into a birthing place, whether that is a birthing center, whether that's home birth, or if they do want to birth in a hospital setting, that they don't have to use all of the over hospitalized use of epidurals and other type of treatments, because they know their body. They are in tune with their body. They know the pain that they're experiencing. They can understand it. They can advocate for themselves. They can say yes, they can say no, and they're not going to get pushed around in those rooms to the point where other extra interventions happen, where it can cause, things to happen with a lot of the mothers, and why those infant mortality rates that we saw are so high amongst Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So doulas come in and they help, really, they're like the cheerleader. They're there to pump the mother up, give the mother and the birthers and their partners the information to make sure that they are satisfied with their overall birthing experience. And then once they get into that postpartum place, that they have navigated it and they know exactly what to expect. Because for those who do have children, who do have had their own personal birth experience, there's so much you would have wanted to know prior to actually going through what you went through, and having a doula there to help navigate that will ultimately give you better infant outcomes, decrease cesarean rates, more home births, more birthing center births, decreased use of any type of medical intervention or pain management, and it will ultimately give us better infant outcomes. Those rates will decrease, and starting in your area, because that's ultimately where we all have the opportunity to have the greatest impact, where we currently live, at our local hospitals that surround us, where we can impact there, and that can impact the state, which definitely impacts the whole country when it comes to infant mortality as well as maternal mortality. So what is a doula? I know we talked about I've been dabbling the word around here, and obviously you're on this webinar, so you understand the kind of the concept of what a doula is. But I wanted to just break it down and make sure that we had the definition in this webinar and this training. So doulas support birthing people before, during, and after birth. A doula is a non-clinically trained support person who provides emotional, physical, and informational assistance before, during, and after childbirth. Doulas do not replace medical support at all. Doulas do not provide epidurals. Doulas do not provide information on medication that they should be taking, prescribed medication they should be taking. Doulas do not do C-sections. Like, doulas are not clinically trained. Doulas are non-clinically trained support people, where doulas, right now, there is no certifying body over doulas, right? Technically anybody could be a support person for someone. Obviously, there are a lot of doula trainings that have surfaced, that have come out, and that have been going on for a long time, but a lot of them may not be centered and focused on the values that you may consider a core value for yourself. So what doulas do help with is reducing the overall cesarean rate, reducing the length of labor, reducing the use of any other pain management like Pitocin, which is the medical form of oxytocin, the love hormone, which helps stimulate labor and start to contract the uterus. And it reduces the need of any type of epidural pain relief or forceps delivery, or even using vacuum delivery, up to 40 to 50%, depending on the circumstance. So doulas are needed in every instance in the birthing process, and even more so in the bereavement process. And obviously, I have a heart for bereavement because I've had losses. I've had a traumatic birth experience with my son where I almost lost my life. So I just think of all of the different scenarios in those three different experiences where I could have had a doula there present, and how they would have helped navigated me through them. Maybe my postpartum depression and anxiety wouldn't have been as high as it was. Maybe I would have, navigated trying to conceive a little bit differently if I had someone there to support me through it, alongside my therapist and my partner. So this is why doulas are needed in every part of the reproductive health process. And it's the reason why I am excited to share with you all where I think doulas are going, and why they're especially needed now in the COVID-19 climate. So, what does it mean to really be an advocate for an expectant mother? It means to help that person make sure that they're comfortable with what they have been presented with, and giving them those options that are available to provide those solutions based on their situation. That it means that you're helping them to speak up, to advocate for themselves, to say no and yes to certain situations, certain scenarios, certain procedures that the doctor or midwife may recommend, and they want to do more research on it, and they may not have to actually ask and react immediately. It also means to know really what evidence-based care is. Is there research done on this procedure, or this new policy or new medication? What does the research say? Do the people look like me? Are they a part of those research scenarios? And then it's really knowing what the patient's rights are. Each state has different rights on what patients do. I don't know if you all know that when it comes to what a doctor and a patient, or a clinically trained person like a nurse midwife, or a nurse, or a midwife, professional midwife, or actual OBGYN. And this gives opportunity to really know what those rights are, and what they can do and what they can't do, what consent is, what consent is not. And it helps them to really advocate for themselves. And then the last thing I put here is just really to advise on what the birth plan is. I think a lot of people focus on the birth plan, but I think I try to say, let's focus on the entire pregnancy, birth, postpartum plan. I call it an all-encompassing plan, because we think that, yes, you go through this whole labor process, and that's when a doula's relationship with the client ends after the baby's born. But really, to be honest with you, that's really when it begins, because who is mothering the mother as the mother has birthed this new baby, but now this mother has been birthed and reborn themselves. So how do we advise them on their plans and throughout their pregnancy, what their nutritional needs are, throughout what the birth process should look like and what they want it to look like. And then what does postpartum and infant care look like? How do they know how to care for an infant? Do they know how to clean a circumcised area? Do they know how to make sure the baby is bathed and clothed properly in 20-degree weather? So it's an all-encompassing plan, but overall, that is what a doula does. Because as many of you know, when you go in to see a OBGYN, I'm not necessarily a midwife, because midwives spend more time with their clients, but it's typically a 10 to 15-minute visit. You don't get a lot of those answers answered in that time frame. And it behooves us to make sure that we have all the information provided to us so that we can make an informed decision. So as a doula, you're helping your client make that informed decision. So what does it mean to be an advocate for an expected mother? It means to always be aware, always be curious, always be specific, clear, and ready. As a doula, you want to make sure that if you don't know something, you tell people you don't know something, but you're going to be curious enough to go out and find the information for them, to be aware of policy changes. Policy has changed so much in the last 12 months around COVID-19 and what doulas can and cannot do in certain hospitals within certain cities across the country. So it's really being aware of where can I come in? How can I support this client, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person? How can I make sure that their needs are specified, that we're clear, and that they're ready to go into the birthing process? They know what to expect and know really how to advocate for themselves, even when you're not present. So it's really helping your client navigate all of those different journeys, but really what you should be doing as you learn how to become a doula yourself. So let's talk about what it means to provide support through the full spectrum. And full spectrum meaning pregnancy, labor, birth, loss, abortion, and postpartum periods. You basically provide support through the entire spectrum of reproductive health. This means that you are helping their clients to be there with individualized support, one-on-one support between the client, the birther, and their partners. You're providing them unbiased, evidence-based information and support. You're available during the pregnancy as a doula. And that may be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in person, phone, text, email. Obviously, you want to have boundaries. My boundary is don't call me, don't text me after 10 p.m. That's a boundary that I've put up for my clients. But any other time, especially if you're not in labor, right? If you're not going into labor or you don't have any issues, that's a boundary that you may have to put up, and that's fine. But, just having some availability to your clients. So if they do have questions, that you can answer them. And text message is typically the best method for a lot of people these days. It's just to send people a text or an email, if that suffices for people who do like to email longer things, and it's easier to email long versus a text message. At a minimum, doula should be providing 2 in-home visits in the prenatal period. At the minimum 2. For my clients, I do 4 in the prenatal period, depending on when I have them. Typically, doulas come in around the 5-month pregnancy mark, in that 4 to 5 month mark. For a lot of my clients, I typically will see them earlier because I work with a lot of clients who are pregnancy after loss or infertility, and I typically will come right after the first trimester. You also, as a doula, will be providing birth plan education and creation support. You will provide them also some in-home support during the early labor process. If they're having Braxton Hicks that are more so turning into contractions, versus them, staying at home versus actually going to the hospital to labor in the hospital. You're making sure you're helping them progress through that. And they're in a more comfortable environment where they're able to progress labor before they actually have to get an IV or, be under monitored support. Helping them a time arrival to the birthing place, continual support throughout the labor process, helping them translate any medical language, especially if doctors are trying to or nurses are trying to prescribe certain medications, especially depending on their birth plan, what kind of plan that they want for their birthing experience. And then you're overall there to set the mood. You're there to make sure in the birthing space it is a positive, stress, anxiety-free environment, that you're providing them with those comfort measure techniques, where you learn how to do a lot of the different labor support techniques, how to support your client, how to massage your clients, how to use some acupuncture techniques, and then making sure that once the baby is born, that they get the skin to skin, that kangaroo care, that they initiate breastfeeding, and then you assist them in that immediate postpartum care period, that they know exactly what happens after the baby is born, whether it's vaginally or through a cesarean, that their body's changing and how those hormones may feel to them during that period. What does postpartum depression look like? What does postpartum anxiety look like? What does postpartum psychosis look like? As a doula, you're helping navigate them through that postpartum period. For me, I think it's the most critical period. Yes, you can help them prepare for a birth and they get there, and then, birth plan maybe goes as planned, maybe not. But postpartum is, if they don't have the support that they need, is really when a doula is needed, whether that's through an abortion, whether that's through loss, or someone who battled infertility for years and is finally getting pregnant. You really want to be there with them and support them through the entire pregnancy, including the postpartum period. So how does bereavement support through loss look like as a bereavement doula? The goal is to help your client heal from the loss, to remove any anxiety and fear, and to find peace and hope on the client's pregnancy after loss journey. So I typically help clients in bereavement and then pregnancy after loss as they go through their pregnancy. Obviously, very similar to what we just showed in the previous slide on really supporting them through the anxiety and fears that they may have and the worries they may have. But also, if they do have a baby that may be stillborn, welcoming the baby, telling the baby, teaching the client how to say goodbye to the baby, helping the client through really what that healing journey looks like. And it's an ongoing client experience where we're not just dropping the client relationship after they go back to work. We help them navigate, what does that look like going back to work? What does that look like, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months after the loss? Then when they get to that year anniversary, how are they feeling? How are they navigating their journey? So there are so many different kinds of certification programs that are out there when it comes to being a doula. There are many different types of doulas, but these are some of the certification programs that I've seen. I think that everyone should choose a program that aligns with your beliefs and your values. And what do I mean by that? I mean, go back and look at the history of some of the programs that have been around for a long time. I'm not going to say no names. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. But if you just go Google doula, I'm sure that program will come up number 1, number 2, number 3 on the first page of Google. And are those programs focused on Black infant and maternal health outcomes? Do they talk about those in those trainings? Are you focused on things where you're really talking about faith-based support, how you are spiritually aligned with your support? So those are the things that I mean by whatever aligns with your beliefs and values. I think that a lot of people choose programs that are out there because they've been around for the longest, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they really focus on your beliefs and values. And personally, I want to learn from someone who looks like me. But there are other certification programs that focus on holistic techniques as a doula, whether that's using herbs, whether that's using more natural remedies when it comes to supporting clients. There are programs out there focused on that. There are also full spectrum programs where you go through birth, bereavement, and postpartum. all in one program. And they can range from, 4 weeks to 12 weeks, some programs, depending on how in depth they are. They do have programs that are broken down for just birth or labor doula support. They do have programs that are just broken down for just postpartum support. And then they have programs that combine birth, bereavement together. And for those who are interested in supporting clients through loss or through death, they have programs centered and focused around that as well. But choose a program that aligns with your benefits and values, and definitely learn more about a program that's focused on that, because I think that overall, when it comes to being certified as a doula, as I mentioned before, doulas do not have a certifying body. It's a non-clinically trained position that you can choose any program. They're going to all teach the same things for the most part. But obviously, for a lot of folks who gravitate towards um, full spectrum or bereavement, it's because they include that bereavement portion. Most programs that are out there don't include anything about loss, abortion, or bereavement in them. They're typically focused on the rainbows and sunshines and unicorns when it comes to birth and postpartum. They don't talk about the heavy stuff. So I say, if that is something that is a part of your value, a part of your story, find a program that centers and talks about those hard moments and how to support clients through those hard moments. Because one thing that I've realized since I've become a doula and I've really focused on bereavement is that I get called more from people who've gotten certified in other programs to support them and their clients through bereavement because they didn't have that training. So that's just a nugget there. You want to make sure you find a program that really aligns spiritually with what you feel like you're called to do as a doula. So some of my recommended programs that I love, obviously, I'm going to talk about my program, but I love Mama Glow. I've taken Mama Glow's program with Latham. Latham is a great friend of mine, and I love her program. I think it is she has two separate programs, one for birth and one for postpartum. So either program works. She does talk about loss and abortion in her programs. So that is a great option as well. I love Shafia Monroe. Mama Shafia teaches a lot around holistic, spiritual, African-centered principles. She teaches everyone from a midwifery perspective. She is a certified nurse midwife, and her programs, for a lot of the doulas that I know who have taken her program, is that it really goes into that holistic back granny midwife style. If you really want to dig deep into understanding what did my African ancestors do when it comes to supporting clients through birth and postpartum. She really doesn't focus a lot on loss, but if that is something that you feel called to do and you really want something that's really African centered, I definitely recommend Shafia Monroe's doula program. And these are some other ones: Sister Midwife, Ancient Song, National Doula Association. They have a rebirth doula training, Birth Mock Doula, Root, Still Birthday, Doula Training International. All the other ones are all Black owned. Still Birthday is not. Doula Training International are not Black owned. Everyone else that I listed here are all Black owned. And I definitely wanted to put those first because those are more African centered. They definitely talk a lot about Black maternal health and what doulas can do to focus on those. The reason why I put Still Birthday and Doula Training International is because I know both of those programs really focus on bereavement. And then DTI has a whole loss and abortion portion that really focuses on Black, Indigenous, and people of color, which they just recently added in the last 2 years. So before DTI got called on a lot of their stuff, so they've added a lot of people. They brought in the experts and they've really restructured how they present their program, which I think is commendable to the two founders of that program. So that's the reason why I added them here, because they have really done a 360 or a 180, I guess that's the better way to put it, from where they were maybe even 2 or 3 years ago. So these are some of the recommended programs that I love, that I think that a lot of them have gone online to virtual support training. So definitely have them down. I'll make sure I send this presentation out. Well, I don't know if I'll send it. I'll send a link to the replay so that you all can have it and view it, and then you can write these programs down. So what does it cost? Yes, there is a cost associated with doula training, and even the prices, the range that I put here is probably off. It's probably way higher than that. A lot of those trainings that are gone virtual actually have increased their prices. So I would say, there are doula trainings that are out there that are as low as $100. There are doula trainings that are out there that are as high as $1,500. I want to say DTI is, for their full spectrum doula program, I want to say it's $1,597, so almost $1,600. So so that's typically how much it costs to take the training. One thing to note is that a lot of those programs, once you get into them, their certification may only last for a period of time. So even though it may take you 3 months to 2 years to be certified and complete all the coursework, do all the reading, any reports and movies that you need to watch, and actually have births, that you attend, that you support. There may be only a 3-year certification period where after every 3 years, you have to renew your license, or you have to pay some membership fee on a consistent basis to stay certified. So that's something else that you want to be mindful of when you think about a program that you choose. Is this a lifetime access to this training? Is this a lifetime certification? Am I going to have to pay a monthly membership just to be certified from a month-to-month basis? Or am I going to have to be recertified every 3 to 5 years and have to pay an additional fee to be recertified? So that's something to note as well when you're choosing your certification program, because even though you may upfront this $1,500 or $1,600, 3 years down the line, you may have to still upfront another $400 or $500 just to stay certified. So that's something to be noted as well. So what should a doula charge? So say you take this program, you put out, this $1,000, this $1,600 for a course, or you pay $250 for a course. How much should you charge as a doula? So doula, I like to say, to charge as a doula is really based on experience. Just like with any other profession, you want to make sure that you're charging based on how many births that you've supported. So I don't typically I tell my doula students that they should always charge for a birth, even if they're charging their friend as low as $100. There's something about a transaction taking place where it's a professional transaction, that the service that's being rendered is taken seriously, right? If I'm giving you my services pro bono, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, especially if you have a nonprofit structure and you want to add this on as a part of your nonprofit structure. But when you actually have a signed contract, it's in ink, that there should be a price that's designated for that service. So even for clients who have less than 12 births under them, or 12 times that they've supported people, they should be charging, upwards of $900. I'm kind of breaking it down in different tiers. Obviously, these costs, these prices are based on births, but they also can be raised based on where you live, based on the average doula cost in the area, which is something that you can research and understand. What are doulas charging in the DC, Maryland area, in the DMV, compared to what doulas are charging in New York? Cost of living is different in those areas. Your clientele, the people that you may be serving, may be different. So you may be able to up the price based on a lot of other different factors that I typically cover in our doula training. But I'm just wanted to make sure I at least tell you all here exactly how doula cost is based on experience. So an example would be, for a lot of doulas in the DC, Maryland area, they typically will charge for birth. So pregnancy support and birth, they may charge between $1,000 and $1,500, even if they have less than 12 births. That's an average price that I've seen from most doulas that are in this area. Now, if you've birthed, over 100 babies, you supported over 100 babies, you're in that master category, you may charge in that 2,000 to 5,000 range because you have way more experience. So that is a understanding of where people are. But typically you got to go and research exactly how much are doulas charging in your area, and not be afraid to ask those questions, because ultimately, even if you are a nonprofit, you want to make sure that your nonprofit can cover the cost of what that service is, so that you can provide that service based on that cost to a client. So some questions that you may get from a potential client are: what training have you had? What services do you provide? What are your fees? Are you available for that due date? They may ask you why you decided to become a doula. What's your philosophy around childbirth? You know, um, you know, Meeting to discuss the birth plan, and then what happens if you're not available at that exact time you give birth. And obviously, there's so many answers to those questions that you can answer. But these are some questions that you may get from a potential client as you start to think about becoming a doula, going through your training, and how you develop your coaching, your training, your doula package, and contract, to make sure that you align that in your one-on-one consultations that you have with potential clients before you sign them on as being their doula. Because ultimately, they're interviewing you as no different than you're interviewing them. And you want to be able to provide them a service that they're proud of, that we are there to help have better birth outcomes for the birthers as well as the infants. So this is my spiel, and then I'm going to open up for questions. I have a full spectrum doula course coming up on Sunday for 8 weeks. This course is $997. Yeah, I know, girl. You like, girl, why you charging so much? There is a lot of information in this course, and anybody who's taken my doula course, they probably will be like, Erica did not charge enough. So Erica raised the price up in 2021 to make sure that it compensated for all of the material and time that we put into the course. So it's 8 weeks of training. You have to attend those. Obviously, those are recorded and they are uploaded to our training portal when it's done. It's live training. I typically only do live training. I love connecting with everyone individually and collectively as a group. And for my certification requirements, you have to attend at least 3 births or losses and postpartums within that 12 months of the training. We have a book list for birth and postpartum that are focused around bereavement that you have to complete. We have a movie list that you have to watch. We do have a lifetime mastermind with our doula community on Facebook, where everyone checks in monthly. It's actually, as soon as I finish this, we have a check-in tonight to just make sure everyone is on track with what they're doing. And it's a lifetime community. The big thing about this course compared to the other courses I had in 2020 is that you get one-on-one coaching. So you get 2 1-hour one-on-one coaching sessions with me or someone that's on my team, one of the other sisters-in-law doulas, where we coach and help you navigate how to start your doula business, how to get your website up and running, how to gain clients, how to research the things that you need to know in your area, which is huge. And then we also provide you, a resource list for making sure that you book consistent clientele, and then help you with your website, your emails, setting up your email list, getting your social media up and running so that you can have a successful doula business or add it to your nonprofit. So in this 8 weeks, we cover fertility, medical support, non-medical support, lactation support. We have a whole week on just lactation. We talk about postpartum physical health, emotional health, mental health, and then really the business of being a doula. And this is all from the perspective lens around bereavement. So obviously, I focus on birth and postpartum, and it's a heavy part of this course. But in every lens, we talk about bereavement as what does birth and loss and abortion look like in any trimester? And how do we support clients in any trimester through any of these different scenarios? So what you should expect in this training is really how to support the birther through Black infant and maternal health outcomes. We go all the way back to slavery and talk about really what chattel slavery looks like, how, what the history around um, obstetrics and gynecology is in the US, and how it was built on the hands and backs of Black enslaved women. Like, we go through, y'all, we go through it all. We break that all the way down, because we got to understand where we came from to get to where we're going. We also talk about just how we really provide support. What does emotional support look like? We do a lot of scenario playing to understand how to navigate the gaslighting that may happen in a birthing space, especially if your client's birthing in the hospital. How do you navigate and communicate properly with nurses and any other people that maybe, most hospitals are teaching hospitals, so it may be like Grey's Anatomy, where you have like the attending, the supervisor, then the actual doctor. How do you navigate all of those people as the doula in the birthing space, even if you're virtual? We'll talk about virtual support as well. We talk about how to really provide structural support to our clients, teaching people how to use a rebozo and use pain point techniques, and really shifting pain and working through contractions with your client, especially if they want support in and not have pain management. How to charge appropriately. I'll break down the charge costs and what the formula is around the birthing costs, as we showed before. Really how to support through a cesarean, for those who want to have a vaginal birth after cesarean, for those who have gone through a pregnancy after loss or pregnancy through infertility diagnosis, and then how to support through postpartum, how to support through infant care, through caring for other kids in the house, how to support the partner in postpartum, how to make sure the partner understands and knows what to do through postpartum. So we cover everything, the full spectrum, and really how to start your business, how to build your network, a community around you, how to make sure that you have a backup doula to support clients if you can't physically be there, and then how to virtually support clients, whether that's giving them a tripod so they can set their iPhone up and that you can see them while they're in their birthing room, to helping navigate their partners through different positions in the birthing space, since you may not physically be able to be there because of COVID-19 and the restrictions that a lot of hospitals have placed. So we really talk about all of those different things, but it really starts with you. It starts with you making a choice that I want to be a doula. I'm here. I'm ready to learn. I know I want to make an impact. I know I want to add this to my resume for 2021. And this is how you do so. So to wrap us up, the easiest way to sign up is to go to, for those who are attending this training, you all are going to get 35% off of the training. And there is a 3-month and a 6-month payment plan, even with the discount code. So go to bereavementdoulatraining.com, put in the code 35 off, and you can get 35% off on this training. This is my thank you for you all for attending the training tonight, especially for those who are interested in this full spectrum birth, bereavement, and postpartum doula course. We start on Sunday at 5 p.m. every Sunday for 8 weeks. We go all the way into March. You'll get to sit down with me for an hour and a half to 2 hours and just talk all about really the state of birth, and what, from a lens of a Black woman who gave birth in America, me, but also what we can do, what we can do to help decrease and ensure that our Black infant and maternal health outcomes are decreased in our areas, but also make a greater impact in our local community. Because once we start local community is where we all can have the greatest impact. And I think that once we learn the rates in our community, we learn what our local hospitals are doing, we get connected with our local OBGYN facilities and our local birthing centers and midwives and lactation consultants, and we build a coalition around us so that we can have a greater impact locally. And then we can take on the state, because ultimately politics plays a role in this, and we definitely have to make sure that we get those legislative people in the right position so that we can get some things passed on a statewide level and as well as a federal level. But I want to make sure that you all sign up for this training and use the code 35 off to get 35% off. So I am going to stop my share. I thank you all for attending this, and we are going to ask questions. So I'm going to allow you all to unmute yourselves.